How can we predict what the Vikings are going to do in the NFL draft? It is 8 days away, and the experts seem to have their opinion. But what data has the Vikings given us that'll tell us who they're going to take? I have a lot of answers for that. We're going to talk about that and take viewer questions. So if you got questions, start throwing them in the chat. We'll start collecting them. We'll have some fun at the end of the show. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, the top left corner, he is producer Dave, and we are sponsored by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Let's have some fun here tonight, Dave. First off, how are you?
I'm doing great. I had a great Who Will Be King a little bit ago on the Bleachers to Speakers channel. We talked about the draft.
Hey, the draft is what we're going to be talking about pretty much for the next week. I mean, heck, we've been talking about it since January because everybody knows I am a very big draft degenerate. And it is the most important event to help formulate your team and get them ready for a potential Super Bowl run. And that's what the Vikings are trying to do. They're trying to get themselves in position for a Super Bowl run. And how can we figure out what that's going to look like? There have been a lot of different things that you can use to potentially be predictive, to try and see, okay, what are the Vikings actually going to do? And we've seen it. We're going to talk a lot about it on draft morning at either 11 or noon. And we're going to break down what the latest news is, what the media has concluded that the Vikings will do based on the mock drafts. We're going to have a big conversation about it. But it's what the Vikings have shown us has been interesting. We're going to hear from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah tomorrow. That's going to give us a lot of information. It's like I itch my face because I don't know why it started itching. And
pollen.
What he's maybe. What he says is going to be really interesting and help us read a little bit more into how he wants to build out this roster. For me, I want to hear between the lines kind of stuff where how committed is he going to be to talking about certain topics? Is he going to give us any breadcrumbs for what might happen? That's what I'm going to be looking forward to. What does that entail? And I think that's going to be a really, really interesting thing to have a conversation about. But there aren't many things that the Vikings have really given us when it comes to breadcrumbs. Yeah, they want to fortify the interior of the offensive line. They already did that. But is that enough? We don't really know. They fixed the interior of the defensive line. Is that enough? Because the two guys they added are 30 and 32. We don't know that either. Cornerback. You could go into the season with this group at cornerback, but are they comfortable with that, or do they want to add a high-end prospect to pair with that group? We don't know that. Backup quarterback. We have no idea what's going to happen there, but I can tell you this. I don't want it to be Kirk Cousins because I think, and you know what? Some people were fighting back like, oh, you don't want Kirk Cousins? He wouldn't cause any drama. I'm like, it's not about Kirk causing the drama. The drama will happen because Kirk is here. He was the most divisive player in my lifetime on the Minnesota Vikings. Like, yeah, there was some Dante Culpepper back and forth, but it was nothing like the Kirk Cousins discourse. Kirk Cousins discourse was nauseating. Nobody would even try to evolve their opinion. They were so stuck in whatever it was. It was like today's political scene. You weren't moving either side. And that was really, really annoying and frustrating. If you have a guy who JJ McCarthy was drafted to replace, you get rid of him, and then you bring him back, it sends a lot of wrong messages. And even if JJ McCarthy has the mental fortitude to be able to handle that, you don't want to put him in a situation where you're going to have these extra elements that he's going to have to deal with. You want to try and remove as many variables as possible. I want nothing to do with Kirk Cousins as the backup quarterback. Is he a backup at this point? Yes. What would he cost? Well, if he's cut, then he would cost minimum. So that's not even a concern for me. It's the other things. It's the second JJ McCarthy has a 0 touchdown, 2 interception game that all of a sudden, hey, we need to put in Kirk Cousins. You don't need to add that piece to the puzzle. And that, to me, that's what that would be doing. Like in a vacuum, Kirk could be a great backup quarterback option. I think it would be a mistake to bring him in here. Would you agree with that, Dave?
Oh, absolutely. But I'm hearing he's asking for money. Sort of the money, determines what it means to him. Mm-hmm. And even though Atlanta's picking up the majority of his salary, he would still want over $10 million to play for us as a backup. And I was like, no, sorry.
Here's the thing. He's going to get that money anyways.
I know. That's just the point. He's getting it from Atlanta.
Yeah.
Even if he came in at vet minimum.
Yeah.
I still don't want it. Because
that kind of, go ahead.
The fans are so split, the fan base on him, and it would become a distraction. Mm-hmm. Unless JJ McCarthy just absolutely balled out from start to finish with no hiccups, it would be a distraction. And I don't want that distraction. We don't need that distraction.
It's an interesting one, but I just want nothing to do with it. Don't introduce extra variables to the equation if you don't have to. Right now, the Vikings don't have to. Personally, I think the backup quarterback is going to end up being Sam Howell. That's just my gut feeling on it. The Seattle Seahawks just signed Drew Lock. They got Sam Darnold. Sam Howell is going in the last year of his contract. They can cut him and save $3 million-ish. Just do it. And then I think that's probably the guy that the Vikings end up going and grabbing because he does have some upside. He's got wheels and can do a lot of little things. Obviously, there are some huge issues, which is why he didn't keep the starting job in Washington. He takes a ton of sacks. He's kind of a slowish processor, but he's a gamer. He's kind of gritty. He's got the ability to run the football, and he's not afraid to take a hit in the pocket while delivering the ball. So if you can work with some of the good things and try and minimize some of the bad, he could be your next Nick Mullins. And I think that's a guy that Kevin O'Connell would really like to have. He could potentially win you a game if JJ McCarthy goes down, but he's never going to be the guy to compete for the job. And I think that's kind of a great scenario that we have, especially with where all the backups are now. You're not getting a Jacoby Brissett. You're not getting even a Drew Lock. You're getting a player who maybe has a little bit of upside because he's only 24 years old, who can potentially grow with Kevin O'Connell. To me, that sounds like a great idea. So that's where I think the Vikings backup quarterback scenario will end up going, but we'll find out. I figured I wrote that yesterday. It's one of my better pieces that I've written in a while. I thought I'd share that because it's like Kirk is a capable backup quarterback at this point, but it's the history with Minnesota why I would completely stay away. Like this is where Ryan Tannehill would be a good option because he's Kirk Cousins-esque, but he's never been here.
Freddie, yes. I've moved up to St. Louis, and right now I am camped out in my number 2 daughter's basement while we wait on the new house to close, which will hopefully be in a few weeks. And then I'll be setting up the new studio.
Yeah, and we're really excited about the new studio. But let's talk about the main event here, Dave, and what we actually came for this show. But first, a little early in the show, but I'm really excited because I want to talk about our friends at Underdog Fantasy. And over the weekend, there's some really fun stuff with the Masters. There's going to be some interesting stuff coming up for the NFL Draft. Baseball season is always fun. Stuff like over or under 1/2 home run. So is this guy going to hit a homer or not? And it's a good way to enjoy a ball game on a random Tuesday and give yourself just a little bit of skin in the game. It's very simple. 2 to 8 different players, pick over, under on their stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your bet. The best part is if you use promo code Forno, you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash upon your first deposit. That's it. Super easy, super simple, and it's a lot of fun during the dog days of summer when there's not a whole lot of sports going on. Get a little skin in the game, have a little bit of fun. In all these different states, there's 33 of them, I think. Yeah, I think I have that math right. I might be a little off, but there's a lot of states that you can have a lot of fun with. Join us. Just remember, it's entertainment purposes only. So if you believe you have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Yep.
Dave, have you ever had one of these Ollipops before?
Never heard of it.
So it's like a probiotic pop.
Interesting.
I have the grape pop, and I like grape pop. Like Grape Crush is one of my favorite things in the world. That's pretty good.
Probiotics are good. Gut health is important.
Especially with my gut. It's a little oblong. But that's a whole nother story. Everybody knows about my ambidectomy at this point. So let's talk about... Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to tell Freddie, don't worry. When the studio gets set up, there'll be plenty of Viking stuff there.
Oh, yes, there will. So let's talk about how we can be potentially predictive. And don't forget, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll try and collect them, and then we will go and have a conversation about it. All right. I do think that there's somewhat of a way the Vikings can be predictive, but it's not exactly, hey, I know this player is going to be taken. It's a little more broad than that, but I can give you a group of players that I believe that the Vikings will end up taking. And I think they're going to get at least 3 of these guys, either in the draft or as undrafted free agents. The Vikings have used their top 30 visits in a myriad of ways. They have also acquired, after the end of the NFL draft, 18 of them over 3 years. So an average of 6 a year. They have taken 5 players specifically that they have brought in for top 30 visits. 2022 is Asezi Odomewo. 23, Jordan Addison, Mekhi Blackman, Dwayne McBride. 24, Dallas Turner. They have also drafted 5 players whose teammates have visited. 2022 is Vidarian Lowe, offensive tackle. 2023 was LSU safety Jay Ward and defensive tackle Jaquan Roy. 2024, Will Reichard and Kyrie Jackson. Both of them played at Alabama, but Kyrie also had a teammate from Oregon, Taki Taimani. And he comes into this list as well because they have signed 8 players who were top 30 visits that were undrafted free agents. Kalen Barnes and Zach McLeod in 22, Henry Bird, Colby Sorsdahl, and Calvin Avery in 23, Taki Taimani, Gabe Murphy, and Spencer Rowland in 24. So the reason why I bring all of this up is because they're using these visits to get a lot of information. They're getting information about specific players that are there and specific players that aren't. One of the more interesting things is they brought in 3 defensive linemen from Georgia. 3 of them. Nazir Stackhouse, Brinson, I'm trying to remember his first name, Warren Brinson, and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. They also brought in tight end Ben Urasek, and Dave's got the whole list. So you can kind of see where some of the projections are. Some of the guys, like in the UDFA, you could see them taken on day 3 because there's so much fluidity in this class when we're having these conversations about players. Like, I think Ja'Cory Krosky-Merrick could go as high as round 4. I think that like Nazir Stackhouse, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, Warren Brinson, they could all go on day 3. They could all go undrafted. Where did you find Bryson Nesbitt and Silas Bolden, Alex Williams? I haven't seen like 4 or 5 of those guys in my research, Dave.
I'd have to look at my notes, but they were in there, and most of them were taken from you. There's 25 guys there.
Mm-hmm. There are like 5 of them that that aren't on my list, which is why I was asking.
It may be what we found going in last week's show on 2 old bloggers, because we talked about it.
Yeah, if you have the information on where you found those,
Okay.
please share it with me. So not included on my list are Texas, Middle Tennessee, Utah, and North Carolina. So I did not have Zamiah Vaughn, Alex Williams, Silas Bolden, or Bryson Nesbitt on my list. I did not find that information. So
They were all
I'm not
verified
doubting.
with tweets.
Well, I guess who are the tweets from would be my guess.
Right. And I'll have to dig it up after the show.
Yeah, I'll take a look after the show too. So what I have here is basically all the players that the Minnesota Vikings could end up selecting. And these players, it's not a guarantee that they're going to select any singular one of these players or sign them. But there's a base, just the Vikings are going to probably end up with at least 3 of these guys, maybe more, especially when you kind of look at the past history. So Arkansas State center Jacob Bayer came back from an ACL in 5 months, Dave. Wild story.
Wow.
Arizona, they hosted 2 players, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and Jonas Savai-Naia. But there's also Teteroy McMillan, the wide receiver. He's adjacent to it. So that's a possibility as well. East Carolina, Savon Revel Jr. The H is silent. That's still trying to get over that in my head. Chandler Brayboy from Elon. Not Elon Musk, Elon University in North Carolina. Georgia, there's 4 players. We already mentioned them, but there's also Malachi Starks, Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, Tate Ratledge, Jared Wilson, Dylan Fairchild, Trevor Etienne, Smale Munden Jr. Like, there are a lot of interesting names here because they brought in all those other guys. Iowa State, Jalen Travis. He also was, I think he was just at Princeton for the 1 year. But Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, Darian Porter, multiple other players that he was teammates with. Kentucky's Zion Childress. Well, how about cornerback Maxwell Hairston, who could go in round 1? Deion Walker, the huge Sasquatch moving like guy. Very interesting player because he's 6'7", 345 and has no butt. Can you believe that, Dave? He has no butt.
I believe it. Delton, you said it's a disgusting list. And for the most part, yeah, because there's not that many top people on there. A lot of the bottom half. And I sorted it by how NFL Draft database has them. But you got to remember, this is just a top 30 visit. This does not include all the All-Star Game visits, all the Combine visits, all of those, which are going to be your higher level players.
And I think the All-Star Game and Combine visits are a little less indicative of interest. Combine more so that you can use that to be a little bit more predictive, but the like Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, they meet with almost everybody. So I don't think that really gives you any real signal per se. But let's keep going through this list because I think we have some really interesting names, especially like those first round guys. Michigan, they hosted Khalil Mullings, the running back. Could also be running back Donovan Edwards, tight end Colson Loveland, cornerback Will Johnson, who could fall to the 24th pick. Defensive tackle Kenneth Grant, who I would really love to have on this team, and defensive tackle Mason Graham. Plus, there's Minnesota, Max Brosmer, Ariante Ursary, Cody Lindenberg, wide receiver Daniel Jackson, edge rusher Ja Joyner are 2. And my personal biggest sleeper in this draft, cornerback Justin Wally. I love this dude. I love Wally. Just a really, really good football player. He's in the same mold as like the Kobe Bryants and the Quincy Rileys. I have a type, Dave. I love those kind of corners. Northern Iowa, Jared Penning, the offensive lineman. I believe it's Trevor Penning's brother. Don't quote me on it, but I believe so. Oregon, you're hosting Derrick Harmon, but that opens you up to like 8 other prospects. Jamari Caldwell, Jeffrey Bassa, Josh Connolly Jr., Jordan Birch, Tez Johnson, Terrence Ferguson, Ajani Cornelius, Jabbar Muhammad, and Dylan Gabriel. Purdue, Marcus and Bo, the offensive lineman. Well, how about Purdue transfer, who's now from Texas A&M, Nick Scorton, the edge rusher, who's also 20 years old, doesn't turn 21 until August. That's something that could really appeal to Kwesi, the super young, high upside athlete who's already has college production. SMU, running back Brashard Smith. Edge rusher Elijah Roberts, who's more of a 3-4 kind of defensive end. So that's an intriguing one as well. Syracuse, Rondé Gadsden II. You remember those Miami teams at the end of the Dan Marino era? He was the guy who had the visor. Like, he just had a great aesthetic. He was a really solid pro. His son. Then you have Kyle McCord, Quinn Allen, Fadil Diggs, the edge rusher, who could potentially be Minnesota Vikings. UTSA cornerback Zada Frazier, and Western Michigan cornerback Bilal Kone. Like, there's so many different schools, and if the ones that you had that I didn't end up completely panning out, which, knowing you, I have no reason to not believe it, it becomes an interesting group of players. Now, when I looked at Dane Brugler's 7-round mock draft that came out this morning, one of the things that was interesting is he didn't do any trades. So the Vikings just made their 4 picks, 2 from Texas and 2 from Georgia. Now, that's really interesting that it's just a mock draft, and Dane obviously knows way more than any of us do. But it was interesting to hear and read him just have 2 schools, because it kind of coincides with what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has done previously, where he's prioritizing Power 4 schools, and he has at a couple instances where he's taken 2 from the same school. 23, he did it twice. USC and LSU. His first 4 picks were only from those 2 schools. And then last year, 2 Alabama guys. So he's done it before. And will he continue that path? I just think it's probably just coincidental, but I'm noticing that Vikings were only given Texas and Georgia players. And you did have Silas Bolden, the wide receiver from Texas, on your list. Maybe they're trying to learn some more about Jahdae Barron, Jaden Blue, Andrew Makuba. One of my favorite players in this class, Alfred Collins, who's just a boring, great defensive run stuffer. Like, long arms, just a really technically sound, boring run defender. But those guys are good football players. They're really, really important to have on your roster. So I do think that this list that we have can be a little bit predictive. I think we're going to find players from this list, and they are going to be, what do you call it? Like, we're going to see quite a few of them become Minnesota Vikings. I'd be shocked if it's less than 3.
That also includes adjacent players, i.e. from the same school.
Well, that's what I read off.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, you said from the list. The list of 25.
Dave, I read off all the adjacent players that I would expect the pool to be include.
Okay.
And that's where the intrigue is.
Yes.
Because
misunderstood you.
I got you. So there's a very large group of players, and I have it all laid out in an article at A to Z Sports. It's a fascinating group. There's quite a few cornerbacks, quite a few linemen, not many receivers, which I do think receivers going to be a position they could prioritize early. I have a video that I just did for A to Z Sports on their YouTube channel talking about it. I can't get over the fact that they might take a wide receiver in round 1. And I think I've talked about that multiple years.
Well,
I talked about it.
You proposed taking, who is it? Egbeku, the kid from Ohio State.
Emeka Egbuka. Yeah. He's conceptually, as far as like a play style, he's kind of like a smooth route runner, like a Justin Jefferson, but he does a lot of the dirty work like Cooper Kupp. I don't like to do comps because I think they can be very misleading, but he is spiritually similar to both of those players and how he plays the game, which to me is what Kevin O'Connell would really like. The whole point of those Rams teams that were really successful at the beginning of the Sean McVay era is they had guys like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods who could block like tight ends. And then that elevates you to a whole nother level when it comes to your passing game. Because if you don't have to have another tight end out there blocking, guess what? It makes your job a lot easier. And
absolutely.
That's exactly what I think that the Minnesota Vikings should consider. Now, should they do it? I think you can easily argue against it. But I'll say this. The last 2 times the Vikings took a receiver in round 1 when they didn't really need one, they made the NFC Championship game. And they should have won both of those games. Against the Falcons in 98 when they drafted Randy Moss, and against the Saints in 09 when they drafted Percy Harvin. Harvin was a little bit closer to a need, but it was like a lower level need. It was like 4 or 5 on the list. Receiver wasn't really on the list for the Vikings. They took Moss, and it revolutionized the passing game from now and moving forward.
Yeah, and it caused Green Bay to draft 3 corners the next year.
And one of them panned out, and who was the 3rd-round pick, Mike McKenzie. They took Antoine Edwards, like the corner safety from Clemson, who I remember watching like college football in the draft in real time. I liked Antoine Edwards a lot. I thought he was going to be a really good pro. He wasn't. Fred Vinson, I think he got injured a bunch, just was not a good pro. Mike McKenzie was a good corner for the Packers for a long time. So they got McKenzie and then Al Harris, and they were just great compliments of each other. It was awesome. Well, not for the Vikings, but it was, I guess, for the Packers because they were just really good football players. But I can't get off wide receiver. I do think it's a really interesting one, Dave, where if they take it, it is kind of a position of need, gives you some more flexibility if Addison does end up missing the first 3 games. Because remember, the suspension can come at any time, because the one thing that the NFL is waiting for is the case to be closed. Whatever that ends up being, they will not levy a suspension until the case is closed. So if he ends up settling, if he ends up not getting, like, being found not guilty or being found guilty, whatever that ends up being, once that's done, the NFL will finish its investigation and render a decision, which is probably going to be a 3-game suspension. It's become pretty bog standard for any DUI charge, moving violation regarding alcohol or something like marijuana, which they're both considered driving under the influence under state of California law. So it could give you that kind of flexibility and give you plus ability when it comes to running that 11 personnel.
Absolutely. And Freddie, yeah, we all saw that Jackson was Kuiper's select and that it'd be an upgrade of Brandel. I think any of the top 3 guards would be. Jackson, Zabel, and
I will be really interested to see if they actually want to upgrade the left guard.
That's the question. Versus another priority. It depends who's. I think it's going to end up depending who's available at 24.
Mm-hmm. And then a potential trade down is going to factor in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see what they end up doing, because I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I don't know what they'll end up doing. And that decision will be very interesting to kind of keep an eye on. Dave, that's about all I've got. Chat, throw in questions. I will answer them. Zach Bjorklund mentions the Vikings also brought in Carson Sweshinger. The only person I saw that from is a troll account. So if it's Paul Hampton from the Minneapolis Chronicle. That publication does not exist. So I don't think that they brought him in. It'd be interesting if they did, but it's hard because sometimes with top 30 visits, you're not getting reporting from your standard sources. You're getting them from, sometimes you're getting them from a Doogie. You can trust Doogie, but sometimes you're getting them from random accounts that have NFL in it. If I don't know you, how am I supposed to believe, like, if you're not linked with like a national publication? It's hard to know. And top 30 reporting is very annoying in that sense. But yeah. We got one from Peter. Who's the kid from Utah State? Jersey number 1. Oh, Jalen Royals. He is pretty good. Could go anywhere from like top 50 to the end of round 3. That's probably like his range, like 45 to 100. So many of those players, it's going to be, okay, what do you want in the receiver if you're going to take one? So And cornerback is like this too. Like the Vikings took Mekhi Blackman 82 spots ahead of his spot on the consensus board, but they wanted that type of player and they valued that type of player. So I think you're going to see that with some of these wide receivers where maybe a less talented wide receiver goes early because he's a perfect fit. And I think Royals could go anywhere in that range for that reason. All right, we've got Delton asking, mixing need and depth in the draft. What position group do you see us drafting at 97? I think that would be the more likely interior offensive line spot. 97 rather than early on. If they want to do that, I think 97 is also a really good potential running back spot. I'd like to be about 15 picks higher, but I don't know how these running backs are going to come off the board because there's so many of them. We think we know because we've been doing these simulators, but like the PFF simulators based on like Trevor's board and how people are like drafting on the board. It's rooted in an algorithm rather than rooted in how the NFL thinks. So I think running back could probably be 97. Running back or interior offensive line would be my two guesses. If they don't go secondary, cornerback would also be high up there too. Let's see. Freddie asked if...
Do you want to know what I asked Grog what the major mocks are showing?
I could have told you that, Dave. I know more than Grok.
They've got Makuba safety at 15% at 97. Jordan Birch, edge, Oregon at 12%. Jared Wilson, center, Georgia, 10%. And that's it for round 3.
If Makuba falls that far, that sounds like a great bet, especially if you don't take safety early. Freddie asks, you're on the clock. Who are you taking at 24 as of today? Well, if you guys saw our last Friday show, which isn't in the live tab, it's under the videos tab on the YouTube channel. Go watch, or if you're listening to podcasts, go listen. I picked Emeka Egbuka at 24. I didn't love everything else about kind of where we were at. I almost took Savon Revel, but I went wide receiver because I just think Brian Flores, I don't think he values high-end depth, like talent at corner, the way other people do. He likes to have certain types of players, and we've seen him succeed without great cornerback play. You can have good cornerback play and be just fine because you're getting pressure and you have a good system. Cornerbacks are somewhat interchangeable. It's a weak link system. Don't have somebody who sucks, and more than often than not, you'll be okay. So I went Egbuka. Maximize your rookie quarterback. And I think the best way to do that right now with where everything is at, adding a wide receiver is the best way to help improve him. More than adding a potential left guard, because I think Blake Brandel's fine next to Christian Darrisaw. Maybe that's a little bit of a spicy take, but I've been pretty steadfast in that for months. I'd be fine bringing in more competition for him. I'm not saying he should be gift wrapped the starting job, but I also don't think that's a reason to take one at 24. I think that's an overreaction akin to the Garrett Bradbury decision. But I know Dave has a completely different opinion on that, and I think that's a fair and valid one. I just completely disagree with it. I think Brandel was really good next to Darrisaw. Darrisaw goes down, you have a completely different type and style of player, and things kind of collapse on the left side of the line. Like, Cam Robinson wasn't a good fit for what the Vikings wanted to do because he played so much differently than Darrisaw, and that play style ended up being a hindrance. But
it was the best selection at the time when there's no other starting tackle out there.
Of course, they should have done it again if they had the chance. Absolutely. But it becomes a little bit more challenging when you have a player that doesn't exactly fit everything you want to do. All right. Let's Skywalking McCarthy, thoughts on Savaiinaia and how he stacks against the rest of the guards? I think he's a good player. Probably a fringe top 50 guy. More of a, if he grabs you, you're done. He's going to maul you. And he's a good enough athlete. I think he's a better athlete than Ed Ingram, where I think Ed Ingram's kind of the baseline athlete for what you want and how O'Connell has shown he wants to run his offense. And I think he's a slightly better athlete than Ingram, which is a good thing. And I think his play style just works better inside at guard, but he can kick out to tackle if you need, and that flexibility is really nice. Do I have a favorite project edge rusher? Ooh, a project edge rusher. Oladejo, the edge rusher from UCLA, if you can get him around 4. Because he's right now he's only been edge rusher 2 years. He's a ball of clay. So if you're going to take like a project guy, I think he'd be the guy I'd want to do it with. David Walker from Central Arkansas is fascinating. That dude just hyper productive despite being like 6'1" and built like a bowling ball. He's just weird, but it works. And he's just a really good football player. And that sounds like a round 4 guy. Has some warts, but you know what? This guy can just play. So I would look at David Walker at that spot. What's the possibility Michigan tight end could fall to 24 from Anthony? I'd say 15-20%. I think if Tyler Warren goes top 10, Colson Lovin goes to the Colts. They're so desperate at tight end. They had one of the worst tight end rooms in football. And for a team that loves to run the football, having a tight end that can run and block is essential. Freddie, why is there a new Aaron Rodgers story like every other day? Well, this last one came because Albert Breer spent time with Kevin O'Connell and wrote a story about why they chose McCarthy. And to be fair, the Aaron Rodgers portion was a paragraph. But it did describe what Aaron Rodgers' pitch was, which was that he would directly be a mentor for JJ McCarthy. And I found that interesting because we hadn't heard that before. Brian thinks tight end at 97 would be a little high. Yeah, it could be. But tight end they need a third. They don't have a third right now. And they need to get a tight end to grow and develop. So 97 might be high, but it also wouldn't be crazy either.
Grow and develop for the next team. Yeah.
Well, in the third round, I'm okay taking that chance. I'm less okay taking it in round 1 because I agree with you. Brock Bowers is like the exception. Discussing Act asks, do you think Alfred Collins could be there in 97? I think he goes earlier than that. Guys who are elite run stuffers like that usually go in like mid-round 2. So I'd say around 50 is probably the spot he goes. But if he's available at 97 and you didn't go DT early, yeah, take Alfred Collins. That sounds like a base starter for you for like a decade. And you know what? Maybe you can get some pass rush juice out of him. Maybe you can't. I don't know. But you know what? He's so elite at one thing that if he doesn't give you a lot in the other thing, I can live with that. First round, do not trade back under any circumstance. Take best player available. I know what you mean. Look, as Vikings fans, it's kind of annoying how often we've traded back over the years, especially those Rick Spielman drafts where in the third round he traded back like 3 times. One of them ended up with Danielle Hunter, so it's hard to argue. The other one ended up with Madison. That was, I remember that draft. It was like, really? Madison? It was just underwhelming. So I get it. I get it.
Be well, Anthony.
Yes, please be well. Any other questions, Dave, before we head out?
Yeah, there was one you missed of Doug L. No, it was Ron. Defensive tackle or left guard at 24?
Oh, defensive tackle. If all things are equal, defensive tackle. Because you have, theoretically, like a top 5 offensive line in the league. You don't need to fortify that position as much because you can have an average starter at that spot. And I think you'd be just fine. I don't think you need to force it, but defensive tackles are harder to find than a left guard. So I would go defensive tackle.
Harmsy agrees with you.
Good.
Why is everybody high in love with Gray Zabel? He'll be out of the league in 3 years.
I'm not that extreme, but I do think first round is rich. I think fringe top 50 would be where I'd start to feel comfortable taking him because I just think the floor is lower than I thought going into watching this film. Because I thought the floor would be better, and I didn't find it to be better. I thought it to be somewhat low, and I was disappointed by that. But it happens. I think, Dave, that's our show.
Okay, cool. And Rick was better at the draft. Yeah, I don't know. To start off with, yeah, he had some good drafts, but he couldn't draft a quarterback worth of shit.
I don't think we have enough information on Kwesi to really have a true determination on it, because so far he's 1 of 2 on first round picks. 2 of them are still to be determined. Like, Addison's a major hit. Like, you got a guy who could potentially be a Pro Bowl wide receiver at 23. Huge hit. He's also used draft picks to acquire players and move around rather than using them to take players. So it's a complicated issue to truly have a nuanced conversation about his drafting.
Right.
I think he's been solid enough, but he needs to be better. Yeah,
and Spielman had a great 2015, without a doubt. But 2016, he stunk. So it goes both ways. It's such a... Hopefully, Kwesi gets it dialed in, and he seems to be dialing it in.
He's learning and evolving, and it's evident with how he's utilized the process. So that's always a good thing. But thank you guys so much for joining. Friday early afternoon, we will have a show. Might have a guest, still working on it. We're going to talk about the Real Forno team. We are going to break down, and we're just going to vibe, have a good time, talk about our favorite prospects. We'll hear from the gallery. We'll talk about some of your favorites too. And then next week, we'll have shows on Monday and Wednesday. Wednesday being a huge, last second preview going into the NFL draft. Will we have a Scolders and Spice on Tuesday as well, Dave?
Yes, we will.
Perfect.
You've got 2 old bloggers on Sunday.
Yes, we do. And then Thursday morning, we'll have one more show leading up to the draft, talking about the final mock draft tracker and how the industry in the final week has viewed the Minnesota Vikings. And then
Wednesday, I host Who Will Be King.
Oh, I thought you were next week. Okay.
That's next week.
No, I meant the week after that.
No, next week. In the run up to the draft.
And then Thursday night, I'll be at the Purple Daily Draft Party. So if you're out there, come say hi. And Dave will be popping around. I think he's going to be on the final Vikings report with Drew, Ted, and Chris. And then Friday and Saturday, we'll be live for the NFL draft. There's also a possibility Friday morning we might have a show. No guarantees. This is why we always tell you, when you subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that bell, because when we go live, you won't want to miss it. And if you can't join live, you'll know to watch later. But we're going to have a lot for you over the next few days. It's going to be a great time. Thank you guys so much. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone.